A writer for the Paris Review once asked the great science fiction writer Ray Bradbury where he did his writing. His response? I can work anywhere. I wrote in bedrooms and living rooms when I was growing up with my parents and my brother in a small house in Los Angeles. I worked on my typewriter in the living room with the radio and my mother and my dad and my brother all talking at the same time. Later on, when I needed an office and wanted to write my novel Fahrenheit 451 25 years ago, I went up to UCLA and I found a basement typing room where, for 10 cents, which you inserted into the typewriter, you could buy yourself 30 minutes of typing time. Now, this seems a bit surprising at first, especially given all the other famous writers who had very, let's say, particular writing habits. For instance, the author Gertrude Stein chose her writing spots based on whether or not she'd be able to see a cow walk by. But Bradbury's ability to work anywhere makes more sense when you hear his answer to the interviewer's follow-up question about whether or not he enjoyed writing. Yes, it's obvious that I do. It's the exquisite joy and madness of my life, and I don't understand writers who have to work at it. If I had to work at it, I would give up because I don't like working. I like to play. This is the kicker. Bradbury's intense love of writing is what enabled him to drown out all other distractions. He wrote because there was nothing else he'd rather be doing at the moment. And you can probably think back to things that have consumed your attention in a similar way. For me, at different points in my life, those things have been UI design, programming, and most recently, playing the guitar. When I'm playing the guitar, nothing is going to distract me because that's exactly what I want to be doing, and I get into it. But there are always less interesting things that we just have to do, like calculus assignments and ironic essays about the virtues of nihilism. And crucially, as your interest in the work you're doing diminishes, the more important the optimization of your environment becomes. So today, I want to explore what goes into creating the perfect study space, one where you can easily slip into the flow state, resist distractions, and actually get your work done fast enough to have some time left over to play Cave Story before you gotta go to bed. And when it comes to creating a great study space, the first thing we need to talk about is context. You have a ton of choice when it comes to study spots. You've got libraries, you've got coffee shops, you've got basements of academic buildings that nobody else knows about, and then there is your dorm room or your bedroom. But wherever you decide to study, you want to make sure that the place you select is exclusively for studying and nothing else. That's because context is everything. Environmental factors influence a lot of our behavior, so if you put yourself in a place where the purpose is ambiguous, you're going to be a lot more likely to slip into the path of least resistance, which is usually taking quizzes to find out what your Hogwarts house is. Now, this is definitely easier to do if you select the library or the academic basement, as you probably aren't going to go there for any other reason. But if you happen to pick your dorm, it's much more important to consider. So for an example, check out how my friend Martin set up his study space. He did decide to study and work in his room, but he divided that room up with a shoji screen so that way he had one isolated area that was only for work. Now, you definitely don't have to go all out and buy a shoji screen like he did. In fact, he didn't even buy it, it was just laying around, but you can use his example to tailor your own study space. One alternative method would be to turn your desk into a corner of the room and make sure that all your fiction books and your video games and any other distracting materials are just out of your field of view. That'll make sure that what you're looking at is exclusively about the work you're supposed to be doing. Secondly, think about the quality of your lighting, because it really can affect your productivity. Now, if you can get natural light, that is definitely going to be your best option. But if you have only artificial light to work with, you can work to control that because it does make a difference. While I was doing the research for this video, I was especially interested in a German study that looked at the effects of color temperature and light intensity on the productivity of students at the Cologne University of Applied Sciences. Now, this study only tracked 50 students, so this area of science could definitely use more fleshing out. But what they did find is that students were more creative under warm light at about 3000 Kelvin, and they were able to concentrate better under colder light at about 6000 Kelvin. To add to those findings, another study done at Cornell University found that light that was too dim or too bright also negatively affected productivity. So with those findings in mind, it might be a good idea to experiment with lighting in your study area. Maybe get a lamp for your desk and experiment with different color temperature in the bulbs that you choose for that lamp. And on the brightness end of things, you definitely don't have to go out and buy multiple bulbs at different levels of brightness to figure out what works for you. Instead, for about 10 bucks, you can go to your local hardware store and get a lamp side dimmer, and if you get a dimmable bulb, you can experiment just by toggling the switch and seeing what works. Now, in addition to the color temperature of your light, the actual temperature in the room matters a lot as well. Not only can an environment that's too hot or too cold consciously distract you and make you look up and daydream and not want to do your work, but it can also unconsciously cause you to make mistakes while you're actually working. That same Cornell study that I referenced a couple of minutes ago also looked at temperature, and they found, among other things, when temperatures were low, 68 degrees or 20 degrees Celsius, employees made 44% more mistakes than at optimal room temperature, 77 degrees or 25 degrees Celsius. So if you have access to the thermostat in your study area, make sure you're setting it to an optimal temperature for studying. And if you don't, maybe try a different location. Regardless of where you decide to study, you want to make sure that you have access to all the things you need for the particular task that you're doing. That includes notebooks, textbooks, index cards if you're going to make flashcards for studying, and pens and pencils. And on the note of pens and pencils, make sure that what you're writing with is something that you actually enjoy writing with. Now, some people definitely go way further than I would go with this. In fact, there's an entire podcast out there with literally hundreds of episodes called The Pen Addict that's all about pens. But I would say don't go for the cheapest pens that are a pain to write with, because they're just going to distract you and make the process of writing notes down unenjoyable. Additionally, make sure that you have a somewhat comfortable chair to sit in, or maybe even experiment with a standing desk. Now, I've got a standing desk in my room right now that cost, well, it cost a lot of money, but back when I was in college, I actually tried to build a much cheaper standing desk using tables from Walmart and screws and a little bit of ingenuity. But I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't enough ingenuity because that standing desk kinda sucked. But luckily, there are now standing desks for about $25, like the Spark standing desk, that are made of cardboard and that you can set up very, very easily. So that might be something to try out. Also, one additional thing that you might not have thought of having with you while you study is a notebook or a piece of scratch paper, or maybe an app where you write down things that come to mind or distract you. One of the things that can completely wreck my concentration and absolutely kill a study session for me is if something comes to mind that I just can't get out of my head. And it could be something stupid like needing to do the laundry. But if I take the time to write that down in a system that I trust, where I know I can come back and see it later, that allows me to get back into my work and let that thing go. Additionally, that piece of paper can also be a record of the things that distract you. Maybe your environment is really prone to having people come in and ask you to do things, or maybe it's just really noisy. If you write those things down, you can start to consciously make improvements and maybe just select a different spot altogether. Now, in addition to the things that you need to have available to you, you should also consider the things that you shouldn't have available to you. This is why your room is often not a good study area and why you have to work hard to make it so. Because remember, it's context. Your room has your video games, your room has your bed, your room has your 9-foot tall stack of cup ramen. It's not always the best place to study. And speaking of things that you don't need while you're studying, the big elephant in the room is the thing that you're using to watch me right now, which is the internet. Now, I know what you're gonna say, I need the internet for research. I need the internet to get on my math lab. And yes, sometimes you do. But remember, tasks can almost always be broken down into individual subtasks or mini tasks. This video that you're watching right now is a good example of this, because to make this video, I had to write a script, which is basically like an essay. And writing a script isn't a singular task. It's a sequence of subtasks. There's the research phase, there's idea generation, there's the rough draft writing phase, and finally the editing phase. And guess what? I only needed the internet for one of those phases, the research phase. So during the other 3 phases, especially that rough draft writing phase where I'm very prone to distractions and I don't really want to be writing for a lot of it, I will often turn the internet off. Or I'll use an app like Cold Turkey Writer, which will literally block my ability to do anything else but write. Now, the internet and its many, many cat pictures is probably the greatest threat to your concentration, but there are many other things that can derail you as well. So before you settle into your study spot and start on your first task, make a mental note of all the potential things that could derail you in the future. If you're gonna get hungry or thirsty during the study session, make sure you bring a snack or a water bottle with you. Or if you need your laptop for your task and it has a really bad battery, make sure you've packed your charging cord. I've had several times in my life where I go to a coffee shop, I have every intention of working hard for several hours, and then, of course, I forgot the charger, so I derail. Also, when you finish studying for the day, make sure to clear your space to neutral. Bring it back to its clean, pristine state, because the next time you come to it, you don't want to have to clean it up because it's likely to make you procrastinate. You want to be able to just smoothly roll into the work immediately. And lastly, this is a bit of a weird one, but try to view your study space as a work in progress. I know we kind of talked about making the perfect quote unquote study space here, but if you're always seeking out perfection, you're never actually going to use your study space to get work done. So just view it as a work in progress that is constantly improving, but that will never be perfect. And that's okay. And one idea that might help curb that perfectionism and make you more productive is to switch locations in between tasks. This is something that I really enjoy doing myself, and I am not alone. The author Cal Newport does it as well, and he calls it the concentration circuit. Here's what he has to say about it. Something about arriving at a new and novel location, somewhere different than where you normally work, provides a boost to your motivation and aids concentration. Over time, this effect will wane. But if you keep switching locations, you can keep re-stimulating this reaction again and again, maintaining an average level of concentration that's potentially much higher than if you had slogged through the deep task in one literal sitting. All right, so because we covered a lot of ground in this video, I want to do a quick recap just like we did last week. First, make sure that your study spot is exclusively for studying. Context is king. Second, keep your lighting in mind and opt for natural lighting if you can. Try studying near a window. And if you can't, at least experiment with your light's color temperature and intensity until you find something that works for you. Third, if you have control over it, try adjusting the temperature of your study space as well. Ideally somewhere around 77 degrees Fahrenheit, but it might vary for you. Fourth, before you start studying, make sure you have access to all the materials that you're gonna need and make sure that access is easy and quick. But number 5, also make sure you don't have access to things that you don't need because they are likely to destroy your concentration and make you procrastinate. Number 6, make plans in advance to deal with possible derailments to your productivity. And number 7, try switching up locations in between tasks. Now, taken by themselves, these tips should hopefully help you make some meaningful improvements to the place where you work. But it is also sometimes helpful to be able to see how other people work and to get inspiration from them. So to that end, I've set up a fun little website called Study Spaces where you can see other people's study spaces and even submit your own. Now, the idea for this site popped into my head while I was writing the script for this video. And once I realized I could use the .es extension to get that cool looking domain name, I was able to get it registered in just about 30 seconds over at Hover, which is exactly where you should register your domain names as well. Hover makes it incredibly easy to find and secure basically any domain name that's out there and available for the taking, with extensions including the classics like .com and .net, and cooler ones like .es like I've used here and .me. When you want to actually build a website for that domain name, Hover's Connect feature will easily let you hook it up to tons of different web services, including Squarespace and Shopify. And if you want to create a professional looking email address attached to that domain, then you can do that easily with Hover as well. So if you have an idea for a fun side project that needs a domain name like I did, or if you haven't yet secured a professional domain name for yourself in your job search, give Hover a try. And if you're among the first 100 people to grab your domain with the link below, you're gonna get 10% off of your first order. I wanna give a big thanks to Hover for sponsoring this video, and guys, as always, thank you so much for watching as well. I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, you can give this video a like to help support this channel, and if you haven't already, maybe consider sharing it with a friend as well. You can also subscribe right there if you wanna get notified when new videos come out, and you can also click right there if you wanna get a free copy of my book on how to earn better grades. Alternatively, you might wanna check out our latest podcast episode right there, or if you wanna watch another video on this channel, click right there, or slam your face into your phone, that works as well. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.